Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Finance Made Easy with Josh. In previous lecture, I started foreign exchange risk management. And so far, we have covered the forward contracts. We've also covered introduction to currency futures. In this video, I'm going to solve a question on the futures contracts and how you are going to solve a question in your exam with respect to the futures contracts. So let's just look at this simple example and how you are going to solve a question on the futures contracts. Felix Co., a company in Germany, expects to receive $4 million. So now you have to understand two things. This is the company that is expecting to receive this money, $4 million. This is the foreign currency. So the company is expecting to receive $4 million in 4 months' time. Now, what will be the fear of the company? The fear of the company is that the dollar will lose strength. So if the dollars, for instance, the exchange rate today is more favorable, it will have been better for the company to receive that money today. But in 4 months' time, the company doesn't know what is going to happen to the USD. If the value of the USD falls, that means the company receivable also, the value the company is going to be receiving will be lower. So as a result, the company may want to go into hedging this transaction, a derivative contract or a forward contract. But in this question, we are looking at the futures contract. So the company will be using a futures contract to hedge this transaction. In 4 months' time, the company is afraid of making losses. So this is the exposure, making losses due to the fluctuation in exchange risks. The chief accountant has suggested the use of currency futures. The following rates are available. So these are the rates for immediate settlement and also forward rates for the contracts. Now, for the futures contract, what is the first thing that the company should be thinking of, or what should the company do? In the last video, I said that there are steps to be taken in solving a question relating to the futures contracts. And the first thing is the decision. The company wants to make the decision whether to buy the futures contract or to sell the futures contracts. And what will inform that decision? There are two things that the company will be looking at here. Either you are using the transaction to make the decision, or you are using the exposure to make the decision. So step one is making the decision. Step two, after you have made the decision of what you want to do, whether to buy or to sell, you need to determine the number of contracts to be bought or sold. So let's look at this question now. The company expects to receive 4 million. So from the previous video, let me see if you are going to get this, if you have an understanding of what we have done previously. So should the company buy or should the company sell futures contracts? Let me give you 2 minutes to make that decision. So it's either you are using the exposure or you are using the transaction. So let me make it a little bit easy for you. Let me assume that you got it, but if you didn't, just look at the solution here. So what you want to do, I want to use the transaction now. Transaction. So the first is the decision? So I'm using the transaction. What is the transaction? Clearly, so that I'm going to have space. The transaction. The transaction here is a receivable. It's a receivable. So foreign receivable. And the receivable is in which currency? The receivable is in the USD. So if the company eventually receives this money, what will the company do? The company will sell the USD to the bank. Is that correct? Therefore, the company should sell futures in the USD, which is the foreign currency, or buy futures in the local currency, which is the euro. So this is the decision. But now in this question, should the company buy or should the company sell? So at this junction, you will not be able to say whether the company should buy or the company should sell. But you want to look at the contract currency. So it is the contract currency that will determine whether the company will eventually buy or sell futures. So let's look at the contract currency. This is the spot rate. This is the contract size. So this is the contract currency. The contract currency is in the USD. So therefore, the company should sell futures. So that is the decision. The company should sell futures. Now, the next thing you want to determine is which contracts. So which contracts should the company buy? 2 months expiry, 5 months expiry. Which of these? So there are things that you have to look at before you determine which contract to buy. And you have to look at what the transaction dates. So when is the transaction taking place? The transaction is taking place in 4 months' time. So we have 1 month time, 2, 3, and 4. 2 month expiry. By this time, the transaction has not taken place. So the company cannot buy this. 3 months expiry. By this time, the transaction has not taken place also. So, but there is no 3 month expiry in the contract. So the next contract from here is 5 month expiry. Therefore, the company should buy the contract that will expire in 5 months' time, or the company has the option of closing out the contract in the next 4 months. So the company is going to close out this contract before expiration. Therefore, the company should sell. The decision here is to sell. The company should sell the 5 months expiry contracts. So that is the second step. The third step is how many contracts should be sold in this question. What is the contract size? The contract size is 500. What is the receivable amount? The receivable amount is $4 million. So both the contracts and the receivable are in the same currency. So there's no need doing any conversion. Therefore, how many contracts should be bought? Just simple 4 million over 500,000. So eventually the company will buy 8 contracts. So this is a perfect hedge. Company is going to buy 8 contracts. But let's look at the requirements before we dive into the solution proper. What is the requirements? Estimate the result of hedging the transaction, given that the spot rate is predicted to be this amount, 0.8436 to 0.8465 euro to dollar in 4 months' time. And that basis reduced in a linear manner. So in this question, definitely, you know that you are going to calculate your basis or your closing futures price because the contract will expire in 5 months' time. But the company is going to be receiving this money in 4 months' time. Company will receive the money in 4 months' time. Therefore, there will be need for you to calculate the closing futures price if you are going through the profit or loss method or the basis, unexpired basis. So if you are going through any of the method, whether you are using the lock-in rate or you are using the profit or loss method, you must calculate your unexpired basis. Anytime a contract is closed before expiration, there will be the need to calculate what? Your basis. So let's look at the solution. So the first is what's your decision. The first thing you want to look at what is the decision. So you can use either the exposure or you can use what? The transaction to determine what? The exposure or to make your decision. Using the exposure in my last class, I said the company should buy futures in the currency that it is afraid that will rise, or sell contracts in the currency that the company that is afraid that will fall. So in this question, the company is afraid that the USD, which is the 4 million, will reduce or fall in value. Therefore, the company should do what? When you're afraid that something will fall in the future, you want to do what? You want to sell now before it falls. So the company should sell contract in what? The USD. That is using what? The exposure. Or buy in what? The euro. So, but if you are using the transaction, which is what I explained earlier, the USD will be sold to the bank when received. Therefore, the company should sell contract in what? USD or buy contract in the euro. So that is the first step, determination of either you are buying or selling. The second step has to do with what's the number of contracts. So the number of contracts, as I calculated earlier, is its contracts receivable amounts over the contract size, which is 4 million divided by 500. That gives 8 contracts. So at this junction, you are left with the option, either you want to use the profit or loss method, or you want to use the lock-in rates. So in your examination, most times you'll be using the lock-in rates because your examiner will give you a question that has more than one hedging method. So for you to save time, you are comparing between this hedging method. So you want to look at the best rates. So you just go straight to using what? The lock-in rates. So in this question, this is a perfect hedge. 8 contracts. There is no decimal points, so it's a perfect hedge. So now, what is the lock-in rate? How do you calculate the lock-in rates? But before we go to the lock-in rates, let's look at the basis. In this question, is there basis in the question? In the former or in the last example, I said anytime the spot rate is different from the futures price, that means there is what? Basis. So here, What is the spot rate? These are the spot rates. We have two spot rates here. And this is the futures for 2 months is this, and the futures for 5 months is this. So this rate will apply for the futures contract, the 5-month rate. Now, it's a little bit tricky here because for the spot rates, you have two rates. And basis, the formula for basis, the basis is equal to futures price minus spot rates. So, but we have two spot rates here, 0.8444, 0.8555. So which of the spot rates will apply? Which of the spot rates will apply? So from the carry forward knowledge from the forward contracts, when you have a spread, there's always going to be a buying rate and a selling rate. So, but the first thing you want to determine is if this quotation is an indirect quote or a direct quote. So this is euro per the USD, right? And this here is known as the pricing currency. So anytime the pricing currency is in the local currency, it is a direct quote. So the German currency is what? The euro. And the pricing currency is in the euro. So the quotation is what? A direct quote. So if it is a direct quote, what will now be the implication? You have the buying rate. So the bank will buy at this rate, and the bank will sell at the second rate. So in this question, is it a receivable or a payable? It is a receivable. So since it is a receivable, it means that the company, which is Felisco, will receive which currency? The USD, and the company will finally do what? Sell this currency to the bank. So it means that the bank will buy. So since the bank will buy, the first rate applies. Since the bank is buying, the first rate applies. Okay, so therefore, we now know what the futures price is and what the spot rate is. So the futures price is 0.8399, while the spot rate is 0.8444. So let's go back to the solution. So basis is what? Your opening futures price minus the opening spot rate. And that gives 0.00045. So that is the basis. And this basis is for how many months? The basis is for how many months? Okay, so we bought 5 months expiry. That means from today to the expiration of the contract is how many months? 5 months. So it does mean that the basis is also for what? 5 months. So how do you calculate the basis per month? It will be this basis that we've calculated here divided by 5. That will give you the basis per month, which is minus 0.009. So that is the total basis. But now, what is unexpired basis? From my last class, I told you that you calculate unexpired basis based on the months left before the contract was closed. The contract is for 5 months, but the money is expected to be received in what? 4 months' time. That means the contract will be closed 1 month before what? Expiration. So your unexpired basis will be the basis per month times months left. So in this question, it is 1 month that is left. So the unexpired basis remains at what? 0.0009. Therefore, your closing futures price will be your opening futures price. Therefore, your closing futures price will be what? Closing spot rates. Closing spot rates plus unexpired basis, which is this amount here. And that will give you 0.8427. So 0.8436. There's a bracket here, so minus times plus will be minus. So it will be 0.8436 minus 0.0009. So your closing futures price will become this amount. So at this junction here, before you look at the closing futures price, at this junction, you have two options. Either you go straight to using the lock-in rates, or you do the profit or loss on the contracts. So if you are doing the profit or loss on the contract, you are separating the receivable from the contract. So there are two different contracts. First of all, you want to calculate the profit or loss on the futures contract. After you've done that, whatever you get is either use it to reduce the liability that you will incur by losing money in the cash markets. That if you make a gain, but if you make a loss, it's going to increase your liability in the cash markets. So, but let's look at how it works. So the company is buying 8 contracts, and the value of the 8th contract is 4 million naira. So remember, we said if a company open by selling, the company will close by what? Buying. If the company open by buying, the company will close by what? Selling. So in this question, the company is opening by what? Selling. So this is the opening futures price. The company is selling at this price. Okay? But the closing futures price we just calculated now, that's the futures price in 4 months' time. This opening futures price is the futures price was today. So the futures price in 4 months' time, closing futures price that we calculated is what? This. So the buying rate is 8427, and the selling rate is 8399. So it means that the company is going to be making a loss because the company is selling at a rate that is lower than the buying rates. The company is selling at a rate that is lower than what? The buying rates. So the company will be making a loss of this amount per dollar invested. Okay, so this amount per dollar invested, because this is per what? Per dollar. Okay, so what will now be the total loss in this question? So let's look at the total loss the company will be making. So the total loss is this 4 million times the loss per dollar, which is $11,200. So that is the total loss that the company will be making. So this is where the futures contract ends. If you are going through the profit or loss method, this is what we are looking for. Is there a profit in this contract or a loss? Now we have established that there is what? A loss. So if the company had not hedged this transaction, what would have been the outcome? So the futures contract has closed now. Now we are assuming that this is the transaction date, right? 2 contracts are here. One, the contracts of the buying and selling futures, to the contract of paying or receiving money. But in this question, it is what the receivable. So the receivable contract, what will be the outcome in 4 months' time? Okay. So in 4 months' time, the company is going to receive this amount, $4 million. And what is the closing spot rates? From the question, let's look at that again so that you see where we got it from. From the question, we're told that it was predicted that the closing rates will be this. So we have 2 rates here also. So you need to choose which rate will apply. So the same principle you use to get the opening rates, that's the same principle you use to get what? The closing rates. So in the opening rates, remember, in the opening rates, we choose the first figure here. This is what we choose in the opening rates. So also, in these closing rates, we're also going to choose, you don't even need to bother yourself thinking about that. You are going to choose what? This first figure here, which is 8436. Okay? So let's scroll down back. So if the company received that money, received the $4 million, the company will exchange it at what? This amount. And remember that this is a direct quote. This is a direct quote. And for direct quote, while converting, you do what? You multiply. So this will be the final amount that the company will have received if the company had not hedged this transaction. But now the company has hedged this transaction and the company has made a loss of what? 11,200. So it means that on the settlement date, the company will be receiving 4 million converted to the euro 3.3, and the company will also be paying the counterparty for the contracts, for the futures contracts, this amount. So the net receivable, so this will be the net amount that the company will receive. So the net receivable will now be what? 3,363,200. So that will be the net receivable. So what will now be the effective rates going by this example? What will be the effective rates? So the effective rates is simply the net receivable over the foreign currency. So the net receivable in the local currency is this amount, and the receivable in the foreign currency is this amount. Therefore, this is what the effective rates. Okay? Or alternatively, you can calculate this in a different way. So alternative, you can calculate this in a different way using the lock-in rate. So this is shorter. Instead of calculating profit or loss, the moment you calculate, so instead of doing this profit or loss that we did earlier on, right? So instead of calculating this profit or loss, instead of calculating this profit or loss, the moment you calculate your unexpired basis, you can decide to use your lock-in rate straight. So let's see how that works. We calculated the unexpired basis to be what? 0.0009. Okay. So how do you use it to calculate your effective rates? So your lock-in rates is equal to what? Opening futures price minus unexpired basis. And the opening futures price we calculated was what? 0.8399 minus unexpired basis we calculated to be what? 0 minus 0.0009. So since there is a minus here, if you open the brackets, the sign changes. It becomes 0.8399 plus 0.0009. Therefore, your lock-in rates will become 0.8408, which is your effective rate. So this is the effective rate. This is what you are trying to calculate. You know that this is your effective rates straight. So if I want to know what the value of the receivable will be, since for a direct quote I multiply, I will just use this effective rates to multiply the receivable of 4,000. It's going to give me this amount, which is what I had as my effective rates previously. Thank you for watching. I'm going to share the link of the previous videos for the forward contract and introduction to currency futures in the comment section. Like this video and also share with your friends. Thank you.